So, your real estate agent has just left your home, you've signed a purchase agreement, everything's ready to go, you've had your home on the market and now some buyer wants to buy it and off you go. You are ready to rock and roll, break out the champagne, you've sold your house and all you need to do is sit back, pack your boxes and wait for your check. Not exactly. Welcome to today's video on sellers, what you need to know about the escrow process, because there's a little more left for you to do. Hi. My name's Rich Simonin, and I am the owner and manager of Escrow Realtors in Riverside, which since 1985 has been the largest independent real estate company in Riverside. Our agents live and breathe this market every day, and the videos that we put on our website, or if you're catching this on YouTube, are as a direct result of the questions that our clients ask us every day about real estate. So we try and put those videos on here in the hopes that if this happens to be an area you're interested in, you click on it and you're going to have some good information about what you can expect about whatever topic we're talking about, which is today, sellers, what you need to know about the escrow process. There's no hooks in this, there's no fees, there's no credit cards, so just sit back, relax, enjoy, take whatever notes you need to, and we hope by the time we're done, as a seller, you'll know what to expect out of your escrow process. So, let's jump in. Escrow, what is it? It's a goofy word. What does it mean? Well, the technical definition is that escrow is a neutral third party that's there to make sure that everything gets done in the escrow, but that's kind of antiseptic and a bit sterile. Here's the bottom line. Consider the escrow process and your escrow officer the person at the center of the wheel. They're the hub, they're the data collector. They're the person or the entity that makes sure that everybody that's involved in your transaction has done what they are supposed to do. And after everybody has done what they're supposed to do, then they will allow the escrow to close, which means title will officially transfer from you, the seller, to the new buyer, checks will get cut, and everybody goes on their merry way. But they can't close it until everyone has done what they're supposed to do. You, the seller, the buyer's lender, your lender, the termite people, the insurance people, I could go on. It's a long list of people that's like herding cats. Escrow's got to get everybody herded into this. So once they're all there and done what they're supposed to do, then they allow it to close. It's a very time-consuming job. It's a very detail-oriented job. And whatever a good escrow officer is getting paid, it's not enough. A good one is worth their weight in gold. Okay? So let's talk about what you, the seller, can expect out of your escrow process. First thing that's going to happen is you're going to get set some paperwork. Either your agent is going to come out and talk to you about it, or they're going to send it to you in the mail and then call you on the phone and have you go through it. Whatever it is, bottom line, let's talk about some of the paperwork that you're going to get as a seller in escrow. First thing is to understand that escrow instructions are done in part. It means that instead of the purchase agreement, which was signed by the buyer and then signed by you, in escrow instructions, the buyer gets a set, the seller gets a set, and they both sign their individual sets. They're identical, they match, and now you've got a set of signed escrow instructions. It makes it easier for everybody to do it that way. So what can you expect? Well, the first thing is your escrow instructions are going to lay out the basics of your escrow. How much did you sell the home for? When are you going to close the escrow? How much money is the buyer putting down? They're going to get a new loan. You're going to provide a home protection policy, maybe a termite clearance, all those sorts of things. If they're paying any of the costs for the buyer, the escrow officer needs to know that. So it mirrors your purchase agreement. Some escrow companies, and sometimes the California Association of Realtors has down that the purchase agreement can serve as both. Some people like to do that, some don't. It doesn't really matter. It's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. But your escrow instructions will mirror your purchase agreement if they're not using the purchase agreement as the actual set of escrow instructions. Personally, we don't use the purchase agreement for the escrow instructions because I don't like the idea of an escrow officer having to go in and really understand the purchase agreement. That's your agent's job. So, nonetheless, your escrow instructions will start with some paperwork that spells out the basics. Then what kind of things will you see? You'll see a grant deed. It's a very official looking document that says grant deed on it, and that is the document that gets recorded that transfers title from you to the buyer. Don't sign it unless you're with a notary. That has to be notarized. If you just get to signing stuff and you scribble your name on that, it's toast. You're going to need a new one. Your escrow officer is going to have to prepare a new one because that has to be signed in front of a notary, which generally your escrow officer or someone in that office will be able to do. So understand that. Don't just sign away for the grant deed. Wait till you get in front of a notary. And it doesn't get recorded till the escrow's all done. It's not like it's going to get slammed down when you're not looking and all of a sudden you've lost your home. It doesn't work that way. What else can you expect in there? A statement of information called an SI. That comes from the title company, and they need detailed information on you and your spouse, whoever is on title. They need to know if you, Mr. Bob Smith, is the same Bob Smith that they're going to find out owes alimony to somebody or back child support payments or has a mechanics lien against them or a small claims court judgment or is wanted for murder in Oklahoma, whatever the deal is. They're going to need detailed information on your birthday, social security number, how long you lived in the home, when you were married, because they need to make sure that you, good guy Bob Smith, is not the bad guy Bob Smith. Because title has to give clear title on this home, and some of these things may need to be dealt with if indeed they are you. The more common your last name, the more detailed the information needs to be. If you have a last name like mine, which is Simon, there's not that many of us, so it's not that hard to tell me apart from the bad guys. But if you have a common last name, it's going to take a little time. So fill that paperwork out and fill it out with all the detailed questions that they ask. What else will you have? There'll be a questionnaire, and not a questionnaire, a document in there where you have to put down whom your existing lender is, who you make your payments to, because the escrow officer has to call over to the bank and get a send over, wire over, email over. They have to get from the bank a statement showing exactly how much you owe on your home. They're not going to take your word for it. You don't know whether you owe 125, 126, whatever. They need a statement from your lender or lenders, if you have more than one, that says, hey, this Bob Smith owes $124,387.16 as of this day. And for every day after that, during your escrow, he also owes us $127.18 for each day thereafter. Escrow gets that finite and they need to know, so they have to send that off. Beware, if you have a line of credit but you've never used it, and so it's got a zero balance, don't ignore that. You still need to let your escrow officer know about that, because they're going to have to send off to the lender to say how much is owed on the line of credit. Oh, there's nothing owed on it? Great. Don't just assume if there's no balance on it that you don't have to let your escrow officer know. You do let them know. What else? If you have a homeowners association, the information about where you make your homeowners association, how much your payments are, but basically the name of the association, you need to let your escrow officer know, because they're going to have to contact the HOA and get documentation that your contract said you would provide for the buyer. Understand on this one thing, on HOAs, there's a fee for doing that, and the HOAs want their money up front. Everybody else waits to the close of escrow, but not an HOA. There needs to be there's generally a fee, and it needs to be paid up front. Who pays it? Take a guess. It isn't the buyer. They don't own the home. You are going to pay for it, and it's anywhere from $50 to $175 depending on your HOA. So just be prepared to write out that check to get that documentation to the buyer. What else will be in there? A 1099, which basically means escrow is required to let the state and the feds know that you've sold your house and what the sales price is. They don't deal with the taxes. You're going to handle that when you fill out your tax report, when you fill out your tax return. You may have a loss, you may have a gain. That's not escrow's call. All they do is let these entities know, the states and the Fed know, look, Mr. and Mrs. Smith have sold their home for $247,000. You take care of the rest on your tax return, but they have to let them know. So that's a basic generalization of what you're going to find in your seller's escrow packet, and those some of the documents you're going to need to sign. What else comes up for a seller in an escrow? A lot of times seller wants to know what happens to the deposit money when the buyer had put the deposit down. They had a deposit when they made their purchase agreement, $1,000, $5,000, whatever it is. That money gets deposited into escrow, and it becomes money that is part of what the buyer needs in order to close the escrow. What happens if the escrow doesn't close? What happens to that deposit money? That is the subject of a whole nother video we've got out there. For now, let's just assume that your escrow is going to close. You want to cross that bridge, but that money goes into escrow. All right, what else do you have? Home inspection. You are not really going to be involved in the home inspection, but your buyer is probably going to get one. You don't even have to be home if you don't want to be. The buyer will be there, the home inspector will be there, one of the two agents will be there, if not both, and the home inspector is going to come through this home and they're going to do a major inspection of the home. Why is that important to you? Two things. Number one, leave your utilities on. Now, if you're living in the home, you're not going to have to mess with that. But sometimes if you're selling a vacant home or a rental and you think, well, I've sold the home so I can shut the utilities off. No, 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 no. Leave the utilities on until the escrow is closed. You need to do that because you need to maintain the home in the same condition that was in when the buyer saw it. Don't think simply because you've signed a purchase agreement that you can fire your gardener, or if the gardener happens to be you, that you can can your mower, and don't let the pool turn green. The buyer saw it looking like this. Don't give it to them looking like that. Make sure both those pictures are one and the same, so keep the home maintained. But let's go back to the home inspector. The buyer's going to want a home inspector to come out and go through the home from A to Z. And that is exactly what that home inspector is going to do. And then they're going to put together a large report that says room by room, attic, basement, everything, what they checked out. But there's going to be a summary page. And that summary page is going to note whatever it is that they have found that is not working properly with the home. It could be some things that you've totally forgotten about because you didn't care about the leaky sink back in the guest bedroom where you never used it. And the bottom line is you've totally forgot that the sink leaks. Or it could be something you didn't even know was busted. Again, go back to one of your kids' room. They moved out 5 years ago and there's a plug in there that doesn't work. Who knew? You haven't plugged anything in there. Bottom line is there's going to be a summary page of things that the home inspector notes need to be fixed. And here's where you come in. At some point in time when you're done with that, when that summary page is out there, you and the buyer are going to have to negotiate who's going to fix what and what the buyer's going to live with. There may be 10 things on that summary page and the buyer may be totally delighted to live with 5 of them because they don't care, but they really want the other 5 things fixed or whatever. It is a negotiation and you and the buyer need to solve the problem. All we can tell you is if these are all a lot of minor things, this is not the time to be stubborn and dig your heels in. You can solve these problems for a couple of $100, solve the problems. Understand your buyer is paying $200, $300, $500 grand for your home. They have a right to expect things to work. Just because you've lived with something that doesn't work right for the last 4 or 5 years doesn't mean that they want to. So be open to solving the problem or the issues or repairs that are noted on your home inspection, okay? Last thing you need to understand is that in your purchase agreement, there is a clause in there that says the buyer has 17 days to make all their inspections about the property. And you as a seller need to provide them with certain things during this 17-day period. Let's just assume that this 17-day period is like an engagement. The purchase agreement said, let's get engaged. Now, at the end of 17 days, let's decide if we're going to stay engaged and get married or if I'm out of here and going to go and get engaged to somebody else. What kind of things are we talking about that you have to provide? Your agent will deal with this, but you're going to probably need to provide a termite report if the contract calls for one. So a termite company's got to come out, inspect it, make sure there's not any problems. There are a number of disclosures that you probably filled this paperwork out when you listed the home. If not, you need to do it now, in which you need to get to the buyer. There's a transfer disclosure statement in which you let the buyer know all the things that you know of that either have been wrong with the home in the past that you repaired or are currently wrong with the home, and hey, you're not going to fix it. But you need to let the buyer know that stuff, along with maybe a smoke detector. Do you have the proper smoke detectors and carbon monoxide detectors? Is your water heater braced? That sort of thing. There's a thing called a natural hazards disclosure, which you will know nothing about, and neither do your agents. There's a separate company that would need, but by law, you have to provide the buyer with a number of things about your home. Is it in a high fire area? Is it an earthquake liquefaction zone? All the stuff that you never thought about and don't care about, but they need to be in a report. Again, your agent will order that out. And maybe there's something else that is particularly germane to your transaction. Maybe you needed to get a roof inspection. If you have a septic system, maybe they wanted the septic system inspected. Maybe you've got a large lot and the fences don't go all the way out, so they wanted the corners marked. Whatever it is, that's the information you need to provide to the buyer, along with whatever other information the buyer needs to get. And at the end of that 17-day time period, then what's going to happen is your agent is going to look at the buyer's agent and say, okay, are we going to get married or are you going to go find somebody else? And at that point, in a successful escrow, you've solved all your little things that came up with the home inspection. Bottom line is, buyer says, I am happy, I am delighted, I'm pleased with everything, yes, I'm going to go ahead with this, and they're going to sign some paperwork saying we accept the home as the way it is and we're all ready to rock and roll. And at that point, now you can bust out your champagne, because what you have to do, other than maintaining the home, is pretty much done, and the rest of the time from that 17-day time period to the end of escrow is more things need to be done on behalf of the buyer. You've pretty much done what you need to do. It doesn't mean your escrow can't fall out. Don't get me wrong. There's still 1,000 things that could happen wrong on this. Buyer could lose their job. The buyer's mother-in-law could wake up and say the real estate gods told her it's not a good home. I don't know. We've seen it all. But from your standpoint of what you need to do, you're pretty much done at the end of that 17-day period. The only other thing I'll note is keep your payments current during the escrow period. Keep your payments, because that way if you don't and then it falls out, now you're going to have a late fee or you're going to have to make them up or something to that effect. The only thing I'll say is if your payment's due on the 1st of the month and your escrow's due to close the 5th or 6th of the month, do not make that payment due on the 1st of the month until you check with your officer or your agent. Because if you make it, it will never clear in time, and escrow's going to have to send it to the lender. The lender's going to get paid twice. They will ultimately get the money back to you when they realize you've been paid twice, but that means they get to horse around for anywhere from 2 weeks to 2 months till they get their money back to you. Same thing with taxes. If your taxes are included in your payment, don't worry about it. But if your taxes are separate and you're getting ready to make the tax payment, but you're also getting ready to close, same thing. Check with your escrow officer or your agent before you make that tax payment, because if you pay the government twice, you'll eventually get it back, but they will take 3 times as long to get it back to you as the lender will. Other than that, I think that pretty much covers it for what you as a seller need to know in the escrow process. If you have any questions that we haven't answered here, for gosh sakes, give us a call. Our web address is, I think, over my left-hand shoulder. Knock yourself out, get a hold of us. We will be happy to answer any question you have, because that's what we're here for. There's too much misinformation out there. Our job is to get the correct information. Other than that, as always, thank you very much for watching, and and be very careful out there. It's a goofy real estate world. We don't want anyone to get hurt, okay? Thank you very much. Thanks for tuning in. See you on the next one. Bye-bye.